Checking, checking. Welcome in, guys. Oh, look, I already got a like. Just give me a thumbs up, make sure we're clear. Sound good? Appreciate it, guys. What's going, Sids? What's up, PW? What a wonderful day that we had. Interesting after hours? Yeah, I bet no one actually expected both Apple and Amazon to dump like that today. I think a lot of people actually had high hopes for Amazon, and that one was just wicked. That was a beautiful drop, though. I do think that we have potential for a nice play off Amazon tomorrow. I know that Avery actually feels the same way, so I'll touch basis on that one as well. 150 out of LCID. Yeah, that was a beautiful play. The way that Avery actually reacted, that was just amazing because I remember that he actually got in pretty early. And then after the rapid call came through, I think the entire Discord just went wild because it just continued pushing right after that rapid came out. It was really nonstop. That was beautiful to see it. And then I had to step out and I came back and I think it was up like close to like $40. When I checked on it, I was like, wow, what a move that was. So let's just get started here, guys, and then we'll keep it brief here so we can get going into get some rest here for tomorrow. But pretty much we see this dump that's kind of a trickle effect off of Amazon and Apple. It's not looking too beautiful. Nasdaq's down about 100 points. S&P is down about 16 points here. So we would hopefully expect to get some upgrades tomorrow, and then that could propel Amazon and Apple to recover, and that would eventually pretty much just lead to another gap up as we've seen pretty much the past few days for that matter. And so we're at pretty much a little critical spot here because of the fact that I do see a little bit of a double top formation here, in which it could end up playing out in which we break that top. But we did hit on S&P here 45.8975, and on the other side we ended up hitting 45.90. It's literally about 25 cents difference. So I do want to see us end up getting this bounce back to the upside here by the morning, in which I would likely expect that to have to be off of some type of upgrades for Apple and Amazon, in which we propel that market back to the upside, and we could potentially gap up like we've seen in the past few days. But if we see downgrades that actually come across, in which we actually saw Apple's earnings were pretty bad. They literally guided down entirely for the holiday season, which was really horrible. And also Amazon guided down into the holidays. So what's really bad is that we both have, we have two strong companies here, Amazon and Apple. But guess what? Now we're actually getting really bad news going into the holiday season. We didn't really get that from the other tech stocks necessarily, from Netflix, from Google, Facebook for that matter. We didn't really necessarily get that kind of guidance that could impact us in this way. So I'm interested to see exactly if we do get upgrades tomorrow, what are they going to be upgrading the stock on? Because there's nothing good going into the holiday season for them to upgrade this. Gaston in disguise. Where is Gaston? Yeah, we need a beer in here. Spy 442. But again, we can go either way. I know that, it actually felt like we were going to drop yesterday night, in which we were pretty much right around critical support area on this expanding wedge. And we were right at support in which we could have ended up breaking down and we would have went right into my demand zone that I pretty much stated yesterday. So right now we're pretty much in thin air right now in the middle of this wedge. And so either we end up breaking out to the top to break out of this, what I would say is a little bit of a resistance here at 45.90 round number, or we end up continuing to this decline here off of some downgrades in the morning and we break the support. And then it gets pretty much ugly, in which we end up testing my fib 45.48, and then we go right into my demand zone below 45.28, and that's not going to be good tomorrow. So let's see how that goes. A few other things that'll play into factor, in which I'll get into with other tickers. So the next one is Nasdaq, of course. That's going to play the biggest picture here. Is this fat rising wedge that we have. So if you actually notice, the key thing here is that we have a beautiful support line dating back to October 13th, is which this trend line starts. We've hit it, the wick down here, another wick down here on October 23rd, October 25th that was, And last, we just wicked off of it rather today. So we're again right at key support on this, in which at any point in time, whether that be tomorrow, it could be Monday for that matter, we could continue to squeeze into this tight range. We're going to eventually end up breaking the support and we're going to end up kind of flushing here. Now, what's going to be that trigger? That's going to be the question mark. Could it be those downgrades that they continue with on Amazon and Apple tomorrow, in which that's the turning point? Or do we just continue to grind higher? We get another gap up for no reason going into tomorrow, and then they flush us out beginning of next week. So those are the key things here. Of course, I'm looking at different key levels here. Key level I'm looking at is 15701 on Nasdaq futures. If we end up breaking down, then I'm looking down towards my fib right around the level of 14463. So that's what I'll be looking at in terms of those levels if we do end up breaking down. Keep in mind, once you do end up breaking down from a rising wedge, you typically end up retesting as resistance. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. So once we end up breaking that support, you're going to look for a bottom. So that bottom will likely end up giving us a short-term bounce back to the resistance before we end up consolidating or reversing back to the downside. All right. So that's what I'll keep in mind there. And then the third chart that pretty much gives you an overall aspect of the market would be this one. Before I get into individual tickers, is of course VXX. Now, I know that Sig actually pointed it out at some point in the day here today. I think he mentioned it in his thread about VXX actually looking like it was finding a bottom, or it was looking like it was going to break out. But we do have a nice little, what I would say is a nice little curling bottom, in which, as you've seen, we sold off yesterday, in which caused this spike. Now, the gap up that we had today, that caused us to decelerate. And so now we're going to get this next leg up, which will, I anticipate, will be tomorrow morning. And then we can die off and get a nice little relief before we get an end of day sell off going into tomorrow. That will be my anticipation. If this is going to continue to maybe zigzag up, we get one leg up to the resistance. Of that resistance will be at 2220. And then we make a nice little falling wedge action. And then we get our breakout of VXX. And that would not be pretty for the upside. So that's something to also keep in mind. So that pretty much flows with the rising wedge that we have on Nasdaq, in which we're going to break out at some point. And VXX is going to be pretty much the inverse of that, in which VXX is going to break out to the upside. And the VXX upside, once we get over the level of that 2220, then that's when it's going to pretty much go full throttle. And we could see the market start to get ugly. All right. So let me get into a few different tickers here that I had outlined. One is Moderna. I actually was watching Moderna. I almost took a position in this one going into close, but I did want to stay cash. I didn't want to get into anything being at support here. I think it's a little risky trying to swing here, being so high up with the market and especially how Nasdaq's looking. I'm not taking the risk at this point. But I do like this ascending channel that we have. I do like this rounding bottom also on Moderna that is created. It had a strong push right into close. It was up about $4 into the power hour and it just ripped $3 right into close. I was like, wow, I could have ended up getting that as a scalp, but I didn't look back fast enough to see that it ended up pushing further. But I am looking at this one. Once we get over 349, then we can see this continue to push to reach this previous high of 353.28, and then potentially breaking this resistance of 356.77 to test the resistance of the ascending channel. And that'll be a beautiful one. So if market conditions pretty much allow it to push, I expect this to really run. And overall move, we could potentially get up to about 362, 363 to test our resistance of this channel. And that'll be a beautiful move on this one. Another one I'm watching is Shop. We'll see what this actually does off in the move. That was a monster move that Avery actually called out today. That was insanely crazy. Major props to Avery on calling that one. He caught that falling wedge action. It literally spiked right out of it. And then it literally just shot up right up to the prior resistance level. It literally filled the entire gap and all the way up to that prior resistance of 1506. So that was a beautiful move that Avery called textbook. And then we got that little bit of, I want to say it's a little falling wedge action, a little channel, descending channel. So we'll see how this ends up consolidating. I'm looking at support on shop right around 1433. So that is something to keep in mind. And then, of course, if we get any kind of upside, you're looking at this breaking up to this level of over 1488. And then we could see any continuation on shop if the market allows that one to continue pushing. Another one, this one's a little bit stagnant all day, was Tesla. By the end of the day, I actually realized that this was actually forming an ascending triangle. So I don't know if anyone actually caught that by the end of the day, but it actually made a multi-day ascending channel. So what we're gonna look for tomorrow is, could this potentially be the blow off top on Tesla going into tomorrow, being that tech may end up being continuing to be red with Amazon and Apple leading that charge to the downside, in which we just see Tesla pretty much be the lone runner in the market. So I will watch this one. I don't know if I'm gonna get in or not. Today was a little bit sour, going just sideways, but you're looking over that 1080 mark, and then that'll be a beautiful move. The only thing about Tesla is that it's likely going to gap up another 20, probably 30 points, and it's not going to allow much upside. So I know that 1080, most of the call flow was coming in for 1100. That seems like the top for us. But if we end up pushing what 1080, 1085 pre-market, it's not going to give you much wiggle room. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Another one that I was curious about was UPST, and this actually plays a little bit more to the downside rather than the upside. So if the market is bloody tomorrow, this may be a beautiful play to keep in mind. We had a similar wedge to the S&P futures, and you have an ascending broadening wedge in which we ended up breaking down on the support level. And what we ended up having now is we had a nice little retest of the resistance. And so this is going to be the similar action you're going to pretty much see on S&P futures at some point in time. As I mentioned, you're kind of dangling in the middle on S&P futures. You're going to see this kind of price action at some point in time once we do decide to break down. Again, it could be tomorrow, it could be Monday. We'll just have to wait and see for that. But I did like this retest, and so I'm going to look for further downside for this to accelerate and then get into this, what I would say is my demand zone. So I'm going to look for this under 303.99, more or less 302. I'll be looking for this to enter under that, and that'll be my range in which I'll decide at what point to take profits below that. All right. But that'll be a beautiful one for the short side. So if market's bleeding, that's going to be a priority to look at. Of course, I have to mention this one. I know that everyone will likely be keeping eyes on this one tomorrow, LCID. And so I just wanted to point out some levels that you're going to want to watch. Of course, we want to break over that resistance level, what we hit, 39.78. That's roughly what we had as prior resistance or support. And then the other key thing is the gap fill that's above. So if we end up getting to push over 43.94, that is a beautiful gap fill that we're going to enter. And over that gap fill, you're pretty much looking at the moon. All right. So that'll be a beautiful one. So just keep in mind that gap fill. That's pretty much the key right here. If we get over that gap fill 43.94, it's literally likely going to hit that all-time high there. I wouldn't even doubt it because I can see this squeezing a lot more, in which buyers will continue to flood this. The float came in insanely crazy on LCID today. And so I would expect it to continue going into tomorrow. But we'll see what the selling pressure is if shorts step in and it's not able to break this high of the day that it had today. All right. Another one, Roblox. This is a little bit on the lower end on my watch list, but nonetheless, it did make a nice push towards the end of the day. And so what I actually had this on the newsletter, I think about 2, 3 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. I actually had it when it broke the descending channel, and I was playing it towards the gap fill. And ever since, it's literally been on a beautiful uptrend. We now had a nice little falling wedge action, and that's what caused that spike today. And so what I'm going to look for is a continuation out of this spike to the upside, and potentially I'm overall targeting 87.74 on this move to that resistance level. And so even if it's not on my watch list tomorrow, it may potentially be possibly on the newsletter. Who knows? But it depends on what the price action is given tomorrow. But I can definitely see this pushing that level of 87.74 and getting up to the upper resistance level there of the highs of that's looking at 90.43. We could push the highs there. So I'll see the price action tomorrow. If we get a nice little continuation out of this wedge, it's worth the price action to get in and take a day trade on this one, in which I do want to see it get over 84.75. That looks to be a key level, and that'll be a beautiful one to step in and just get a quick scalp on that tomorrow. And it's also actually worth a swing in my opinion as well. That's why I said it may be on the newsletter, it may not, depends on the price action tomorrow. Another one, and this may be the key one, this is probably going to be the first one that everyone literally looks at tomorrow. And so what I'm actually looking at here is, as you see, we had this nice little trendline support that we had. We had that beautiful move in which we topped out today. And then we had that nasty little gap down after hours here. And so we pretty much hit this level, as far as I know, right around 3307. That's where we're sitting at into the closing hours. And the move that I'm pretty much looking at, and I know Avery was pretty much raving about, and after hours, was pretty much the gap up that we're gonna have tomorrow. Not necessarily the gap up, but the run we're gonna have during market hours tomorrow, in which we're gonna end up likely retesting the trendline support as resistance, and that will give us a beautiful move going into tomorrow, and that can give us from that 3307 we're looking at 3386 potentially. So that will be a beautiful runner if we can get that push tomorrow. Now, again, it's going to depend what are the upgrades, what's the market conditions. I think that's going to likely play a factor into this one because of how bad futures do look right now. But that'll be a beautiful move. So if market gives any kind of relief, this will definitely be a runner, and I can see us retesting that trendline support that we broke down from. All right, and then the very last one I just want to point out was SE. I think it was watching it tomorrow. I saw it right into close. I think I caught it a little too late, but we broke from a descending channel. We had a nice little rising wedge action going into the market close, and so I don't necessarily like that rising wedge action. So I do expect us to retest the support level, but I am gonna watch it. If we get that push and we get over 354.92, then I will be in here for a day trade, in which that's gonna be a key level that's gonna break over, and we can see further upside. Yeah, tech will bleed. I mean, that's why I say it's either or pretty much. Like I said, SC can end up retesting. That's likely scenario right here is retesting the support of this descending channel that we broke out of. But either or, if we end up getting some kind of rally in which the market's just been gapping us up every single night for that matter. But again, there is potential downside here to retest the support level here, and that would be a beautiful short nonetheless. All right. So I pretty much gave you either way. I think the one that I'm least bearish on is pretty much Roblox. Everything else, I mean, UPST again, this was a beautiful short in my opinion tomorrow as well. You had the nice little breakdown from that expanding wedge, and that can easily go right into my demand zone below that 303 level. So that'd be a beautiful one to short tomorrow. Not just necessarily tech in sight of just trying to go directly after Amazon and Apple, but this beautiful place out here that you can actually get a nice short. So UPST and SE are definitely two that I could see myself actually shorting that and getting double digit moves out of that. But other than that, that was pretty much what I was watching. Actually, Tamakaze, if you're still there, did you see this little beautiful rounding bottom on VXX by the way? I don't know if you noticed that by the way. But just in case you didn't actually look at VXX, that is a beautiful little rounding bottom. So I understand why you say tech will bleed. But other than that, I think that wraps up tonight's session. I, the only thing that actually has me crazy is the way that they've been gapping us up. And if you see on Nasdaq, we're literally right near my support trend line right now on this rising wedge. So I really just want to see, are they really going to just gap us up overnight on Nasdaq? Because that was literally what happened pretty much the last time, yesterday night. They literally just gapped us up out of the moon. So are they going to step in the gap us up again, even though pretty much earnings, pretty much the two heavyweights, literally just gave us the worst news possible out of all the tech earnings? I think that was the worst ones that we just had, was literally just ruining the holiday season. So I think that was the key to literally just push us over the edge and go to the downside. But again, we'll see what the market makers do tomorrow, what the analysts actually come out with. If they do upgrade Amazon and Apple, that's going to be insanely something to laugh at, because I don't understand how you pretty much downgrade, how you upgrade something that's already pretty much guided down for that matter. So other than that though, I'll leave you guys with that information. I'll see you guys on live tomorrow. But I appreciate you guys joining, and you guys have a good night.